This year was the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and much was made of it. The speech is famous for what it says and for what it does not in its legendary brevity. History tells us that Lincoln was finished with his remarks before many people there knew he had begun. Short as it is, it said everything Lincoln wanted and needed to say, chiefly that those soldiers who died on that field had not done so in vain. I wonder, was he speaking about all the soldiers who died there, or just the Union soldiers? The cemetery he was there to dedicate was for Union soldiers, over 3,500 of them, who died during the 3 days of fierce fighting outside that little Pennsylvania town. What about the Confederate dead? Years later, many of them were exhumed from their makeshift battlefield graves, and their remains were taken to cemeteries in the South. Did they fight and die for nothing? They lost the war, their cause was lost, their lives were lost. Did they fight and die for nothing? It's said that when Lee saw what remained of the huge force of soldiers that he sent across the open field on the third day in what has become known as Pickett's Charge, but was little more than vicious carnage, that he cried. The war was still being fought when Lincoln spoke at Gettysburg. It was a national catastrophe. People everywhere, North and South, wanted it to end. But wars, so easily begun, are notoriously difficult to end. One reason is that, after so much loss of life, no one wants to be defeated, to surrender to the enemy's terms. They will pay any price, including further slaughter, to avoid that disaster. The Japanese on Okinawa. General Lee said that the greatest word in the English language was duty. A soldier is one who answers the call. Ours is not to wonder why, ours is but to do or die. Period. Of the men in military service, Marines are treated with the utmost respect, because a Marine will always follow orders, no matter what the peril, no matter what the cost, no matter what the order. A Marine is that most ancient of warriors, soldiers. Semper Fi. It's not a slogan, it's a promise. And it's a reason why wars are so infernally difficult to stop. Would a commander-in-chief ever stand up and say, "It is with deep regret that I must tell you that we were ill-informed and we exercised bad judgment, we acted in haste, our objective proved to be an illusion, and for various other reasons too complicated to state simply now, we were unable to accomplish our mission here. Further action is insupportable. We have failed in every regard, and we leave this place in much worse condition than it was when we entered it. It grieves me to tell you that the brave men and women who gave their lives to this endeavor have done so to no avail. As we look back on what we have done here, we are forced to admit that our soldiers have given their lives to no end. They have died for nothing. We have thrown their lives away. I cannot properly express my sorrow over these sad and terrible events. We are going to leave this place now before any more lives are lost. May God forgive us for what we have done." No commander-in-chief is ever going to make that speech, even if it were true. Their own people would tear them to pieces if they did. The Indian chiefs, beaten almost into extinction, simply said, "We will fight no more, forever." We have to justify our wars to justify our dead. That's what Lincoln was doing or was trying to do. So many died in that Civil War. It was so unexpectedly and overwhelmingly harsh, bitter, long, and cruel. It was like prolonged torture on a national scale. Thousands and thousands slain, slaughtered really, in a single day's combat, a tribute to military arts, weapons development. The foot soldier became cannon fodder, cut to ribbons by shrapnel, grape shot, and Gatling guns. Bodies torn to pieces, infections, setting in. And this was not a distant war, dimly perceived. This was happening in town after town, family after family, up close, as they say, and very personal. And Lincoln had to stand up and say, it was worth it. We were fighting for something precious enough to justify all of this, that massive graveyard and others like it across the blood-soaked land. He had to justify that war, to justify the killing. It's no wonder he kept his remarks short. We do the same when the bodies return from overseas and we bury them and we call them fallen heroes. And our leaders pin medals on the soldiers who survive and tell us that this is what makes our country so great. Because soldiers will step forward and answer the call. When things are so bad, where those soldiers were killed with the suicide bombers, the IEDs, and snipers, all invisible among the resident population, that the suicide rate among our soldiers exceeds 1 per day, people choosing to take their own lives rather than be derelict in their duty. No one is going to stand up and say, this was a big mistake, this is wrong. These poor soldiers' lives are being wasted, thrown away. They are dying for nothing. No one is ever going to say that, not even if it is true.